Okay, so good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well since it is Valentine's Day. And as promised, as what I've told you last Tuesday, our topic for this morning is very, very timely as we are going to talk about love and William Shakespeare. Before we actually dwell into love, um, I'd like us first to have some backgrounder on William Shakespeare as well as sonnets, so we would really understand how love is discussed in Sonnet 116. That's our featured literary piece this morning. So, together with this video lesson, are links that I have included in the pages that would lead you to another video on William Shakespeare. I think that's like 101 facts about William Shakespeare. And another one is a discussion on different kinds, origin and different kinds of sonnets. But of course, to help you understand them better, I have included in this video explanation and summary of highlights rather of both William Shakespeare and sonnets. So before we go to William Shakespeare's life and works, let us first read our featured sonnet this morning, which is Sonnet 116. So, Sonnet 116, let me read. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose words unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. So, I'd like you to read that once again, if just in case you find it difficult to understand. I want you to read it over and over again until you get at least the gist, or you at least get the main idea or the main topic of Sonnet 116. What does it talk about? That's the first question that you might want to answer for us to understand sonnets and poetry in general. What do you think the sonnet talks about? But before that, let us first talk about William Shakespeare, our featured poet this morning. So William Shakespeare is considered to be like a national artist in England, and he actually holds the title the Bard of Avon. When we say bard, the word here, bard means writer, playwright, because Shakespeare, although he's known as a sonneteer, he is mostly known as a playwright, someone who writes scripts um, for what do you call this, stage plays. So he is also considered to be the greatest writer of the English language. Okay, he's so good that he's not only a writer. He was actually also an actor during his time. He was born in 1564 at Stratford upon Avon. The exact date, though, is not very sure because during that time there was no birth certificates for children, for newly born children. The closest thing on the record that they have is their baptismal record, and he was baptized few days after April 23, and therefore researchers assumed that he was perhaps born few days before that, and so they assumed that he was born on the 23rd. His parents were John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. They belong in a middle class family. They were not that rich. They were not poor either, but yeah, they they made enough to afford to send William Shakespeare to Latin and grammar school. Remember, during this time, it was not English that was the language spoken by the elite, but it was actually Latin. This is something to do with colonialization. Remember our topic last time with what happened to the first supply, when I mentioned that England once upon a time was not that powerful, and in fact they were actually colonized by different countries, and France was one of them. And France's language back then was Latin, and therefore the rich people in England spoke Latin, and the poor people, the commoners, spoke English. So in 1582, he was like 18 years old. He met Anne Hathaway, not the actress that we know, not that one, but they have the same exact name. And they got married. And yes, Anne Hathaway was few years his senior. She was older than Shakespeare, but you cannot question love. We'd say that although we found it impossible for John Smith and Pocahontas to actually fall in love because of their age, here is William Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway proving that age doesn't matter when it comes to when it comes to love. Anyway, so in their married life, they've had 3 children. The eldest was Susanna, and then the next were the twins Hamnet and Judith. Okay. In 1585 to 1592, no records whatsoever of Shakespeare's whereabouts or activities were ever recorded, and therefore that's what the critics would consider to be William Shakespeare's lost years. Now, a few years after that, actually 2 years after that, he became a member of the Lord Chamberlain's Men. This is a theater group. Now, I want you to consider this, that during this time, when you are a member of a theater group, it doesn't mean that you are limited to whatever role you take. It doesn't mean that you enter there as an actor, you'll be forever actor, but there are times that you can write, there are times that you can, that you will have to help in the stage production and all of those things. Later on, in 1603, the Lord Chamberlain's Men's name was changed to the King's Men because of the king that they've had during that time. In 1599, Shakespeare had actually built his own theater company or theater group called the Globe Theater. Moreover, William Shakespeare became well known from 1594 to 1598, 4 years. And that is also where he started to write his sonnets. And in these 4 years, he was able to come up with 154 sonnets. If you think that's a lot, wait until you hear other earlier sonneteers, and you'll be amazed how many sonnets they were able to produce in their entire writing career. But 154 sonnets is a lot. Some of us couldn't even imagine writing sonnets, but Shakespeare was able to produce this number of sonnets. Interestingly, his 154 sonnets were divided into 2 groups, categories based on themes. This is according to critics. This is not according to Shakespeare himself. Researchers and critics and analysts of his sonnets were able to distinguish 2 main themes in his 154 sonnets. The first 126 were somewhat talking about a fair youth, a young man. Probably this is where the rumor of William Shakespeare being gay and queer came up, because they found it weird that William Shakespeare, a guy, would be talking about a young man in his sonnets. But you have to remember that not all his sonnets are love sonnets. The theme would range from friendship, love, companionship, and all of those things. It's not only about love. And then the other half of it, sonnet 127 to 152, seem to be talking about a dark lady, meaning someone who has dark, complexion. So this time it talks about a lady. But then again, let me remind you that not all of his sonnets are about love. And just a quick fact that William Shakespeare, most of his works were commissioned, meaning he was paid to write these sonnets. Some rich people back then would ask him to write a sonnet for his or her love or father or friend. So it's not all about Shakespeare, but most of the time, it's his clients' ideas that he just put into writing. But of course, a number of these sonnets originally came from him. When I say originally came from him, the ideas are actually his. Okay? In 1609, all of these 154 sonnets were published through the help of his publisher and editor, Thomas Thorpe. And that's when these sonnets became famous even more. Unfortunately, in 1616, April 23, the same day as his supposed birthday, William Shakespeare died. So that's like the short life of William Shakespeare. But hey, I guess William had reached the peak of his career, and he had good family, and he lived a good life. So I think he had no regret whatsoever. And so we go back to Sonnet 116. Not that we want to establish the personal connection of Shakespeare and Sonnet 116. We just want to read Sonnet 116 once again, so that it would come down to you. No, it would, you'll be able to absorb it a little bit more. So Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose words unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Okay, so for the second part, we're going to talk about sonnets. I've divided this video into 2 parts. So I'll see you on the next video. If you have any question or any clarification regarding the life of Shakespeare, life and career of Shakespeare, let us talk about it on our meeting on Tuesday.